Thank you, Chair. Sir Stephen, back in January this year, I asked the former Commissioner several questions which she could not answer due to the ongoing Operation Hillman investigation. That investigation has now finished, and so today, the first opportunity to speak with you since the conclusion of the investigation, I'm going to ask some of those questions again to you as Acting Commissioner. Now, we know from the Sue Gray report that on the 18th of December 2020, a panic alarm was triggered and a police officer on door duty at number 10 responded. And I quote from the Sue Gray report, "They observed a large number of people in the area outside of the main press office and one individual giving a speech. Inside the press office, a further 15 to 20 people were present," end quote. So I repeat the question I put to the former Commissioner in January. Was there any attempt by the Metropolitan Police to use the 4 E's approach to engage, explain, encourage and enforce with attendees at any of the Downing Street lockdown parties while they were happening?
So I'm aware of the situation you're talking about when an officer and a custodian were called to I don't know if it was a smoke alarm or something. It was an alarm of some sort, and we spoke to both of those people. And they talked about walking. They were there for a short period of time, responding to the alarm. They walked through a couple of rooms and they saw a number of people. We asked them about their experiences. They did not. The officer, the custodian, obviously is not a police officer. Wouldn't expect to. The officer did not engage with 4 E's. No, as far as I'm aware. I haven't read the statement from the officer, but as far as I'm aware, no, they didn't.
Okay, so Londoners, in fact, people across the United Kingdom, will be wondering why the 4 E's approach was not used in that case where a Metropolitan Police officer encountered people partying in a way that was clearly outside the rules that were in place at the time. So my next question that I asked the former Commissioner was any concern raised with you, the former Commissioner, or any member of Met leadership about what was going on in Downing Street while the coronavirus lockdown laws were in place? So was any concern raised at the time?
Certainly not with me, and the former Commissioner has never mentioned any concerns raised with her either.
Well, I think we need to understand at what point the Met Police did find out, because the former Commissioner said to me back in January, "I can assure you that we are carrying out our investigations, and if that is a relevant matter, we will find out about it." So are you looking to find out about why the 4 E's approach was not used on that occasion on the 18th of December, which is one occasion that we actually know that a Met officer encountered partying in Downing Street?
So what I'm not signing up to is the characterisation you've talked about in terms of the partying going on. I go back to what I know that the former Commissioner said, which was the officers' roles there are ones of security and safety. They're there to protect the perimeter. They're not there to police what goes on inside the building. And I don't believe that the officer that we're talking about felt that they were seeing something that necessarily breached coronavirus regulations.
I think, the Sue Gray report says that people working elsewhere in the number 10 building that evening heard significant levels of noise coming from what they characterised as a party in the press office, and a cleaner who attended the room the next morning noted there'd been red wine spilled on one wall and on a number of boxes of photocopier paper. It looks and smells like a party. The question, though, is so if the 4 E's approach was not used, the former Commissioner said, that she was going to look into this. Can I ask you to come back and, in writing perhaps, and explain why the officers in Downing Street who witnessed things were not using that same approach that was used on members of the public? I'm also interested in at exactly what point you, the former commissioner, or any member of Met leadership were made aware of an officer witnessing the law-breaking party, or any other illegal events in Downing Street or Whitehall?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, because it gives me a chance to go back to your previous question, which is it's very difficult to put together all these different time frames. So this officer and this custodian were there at a certain time. They weren't there for very long. The event may well have gone on longer. I don't know. Some events, as we know from Sue Gray's report and elsewhere, went on till the early hours of the morning with a changed character in them. And again, this is one of the issues that I sort of hinted at earlier, which is, sorry, I'm going somewhere with this. One of the things we had to decide was, is this gathering, is this event work-related or not work-related? And that was an important question asked. I think it's impossible to expect an officer walking through a room with a lot of people in it to work out whether or not these people are breaching coronavirus regulations, when it's taken a team of 12 experienced detectives many, many weeks to do the same thing. We can take evidence from that officer, as indeed we did, and I can write to you, as you asked, about what that evidence contained.
Thank you. I do think, though, that the rules in place at the time were that gatherings of 2 or more people indoors continued to be prohibited unless an exception replied, and it's quite hard to see an exception for the numbers of people that were being described.
Sorry, it's not work. That's the point. Work-related is an exception. So the question is not how many people, the question is what were they there for?
People were meant to be more than...
Did they have a reasonable excuse? Could we have had a conviction in court, or would they have heard a reasonable excuse? We were there for a work-related event. That was the thing that our officers have looked at over the last few weeks.
Now, there was a third question that I asked the former commissioner, and Chair, with your permission, I would like to just ask quickly this one. So I asked the former commissioner, are you worried that the apparent lack of investigation of the mess in Downing Street might be further damaging trust and confidence in the police? Now, people across London, across the UK, were making huge sacrifices at this time, and the Met Police are meant to police without fear or favour. But what it looks like is as if the Met have been turning a blind eye to these events in Downing Street. So are you confident that the Met are able to police without fear or favour?
Yes, I am. And can I point out several things? Firstly, we've issued well over 120 fixed penalty notices in this event. So that's not doing nothing. And I'd also remind you that police officers put their lives on the line during COVID. So we're well aware of the suffering. Most police officers and police members of the police family suffered exactly the same as the public did. And we were at work the whole time. Some of my officers were picking up bodies of people who died of COVID, working alongside the So please don't think that we are not aware of the suffering involved.
I'm very aware that you are aware of that, but what the public are experiencing is seeing more and more photographs which look absolutely shocking. I'm quite sure that Metropolitan Police officers were not indulging in parties like that.
I accept that many of the photographs that we are seeing look bad, and Sue Gray's report has dealt with that. We deal with the law, not what looks bad. And just because there is alcohol present, can I just remind people that the COVID regulations are about breaching COVID regulations. They're not about whether there's drink there or not. We have to put fixed penalty notices to people that we think will win in court. And there has to be evidence behind it. And there is not always evidence. And what looks, a photograph can be somewhat deceptive in these areas. We need evidence, and they need to be proving there is no reasonable excuse behind what was going on. Okay. We have not, I repeat this, we have not shied away from issuing a fixed penalty notice where we thought it was deserved. We have policed without fear or favour, and I would not have presided over anything less than that.
Thank you. Right, if we can move on to